Okay, great. I'm really excited that Gethin and I are able to talk to you today about the MND Research Collective. It's really a passion project of ours. It's an initiative that we started in Australia and New Zealand. And it's an amazing initiative that's really about leveraging research collaboration for better outcomes for people living with MND. So firstly, what is a collective? So a collective is when a group of stakeholders come together with a shared vision and a shared goal. So it's not a new organisation, it's not a new initiative. It's really about existing organisations coming together to solve a complex problem. And there's a really great review in the Stanford Social Innovation Review from 2011 that talks about what a collective is. So you can read up a bit more about generally what a collective is. And it also describes a number of collectives that have been successful and what really has gone into a successful collective. And they were able to identify five conditions that set a collective up for success. So the first one is a common agenda. And that is when all the stakeholders are on board with a shared vision for change, a shared approach on how to solve a problem together. The second one is around shared measurements of success. So as you're working towards objectives, what are the measurements that you're achieving those, and that these are agreed to? And what that means is that not only are you keeping on track and within scope of what you're hoping to achieve, but it also helps to hold all of the participants within the collective accountable. The third one is around mutually reinforcing activities. And what this really means is that every stakeholder that's involved in a collective will have different strengths. So it's not about every stakeholder doing exactly the same thing. It's about that every stakeholder contributing their strength towards that overall common vision or that common objective. The fourth one is around continuous communication. So not only continually updating each other with what's been happening, what progress is being made, but also it's about building trust between organisations. A collective is not going to be successful if one organisation feels like they're not being heard or they feel like another organisation is benefiting from the collective. And the fifth condition is about backbone support organisations. And what this means is that a collective will only be successful if you have the right people to help drive it forward, you have resources and you have infrastructure. It won't be a success on its own. So a brief history about the MND Research Collective. It was really driven by conversations between Fight MND and MND Research Australia, so Gethin and myself, talking about our impact of our investment in MND research in Australia. And so what we did was we hosted a national MND research summit. We did this in November 2020. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to do it as a virtual event, but it also allowed stakeholders from all across Australia, including people with lived experience, to be involved. So we had 60 stakeholders, including people with motor neurone disease or lived experience of MND. We had researchers, funders, representatives from government and industry, care providers, as well as clinicians. And we came together to talk about the way that we could have a collective impact in motor neurone disease. So what came out of that was the concept of establishing an MND research collective. Also out of the summit, we developed our vision and purpose, as well as a roadmap, as well as a governance model, so what the structure of the governance of the MND collective would look like, and the establishment of expert advisory groups within the collective. So out of the summit, the collective developed our purpose, which is to sustain hope through collaborative research and improve the lives of people living with MND. We established our vision and our 3 objectives. Sorry, I'm just standing to the side because I'm a bit short to see the screen. So accelerating discoveries and treatments towards a cure for motor neurone disease, improving the standard of care and experience for people living with MND through research and education, and enabling a collective approach to transform the system the way that we do research in MND in Australia. So these were the 3 objectives that came out of the summit. And then since then, we've identified another really critical part or critical objective of the collective, which is around communication. So how members of the collective communicate internally with each other, but also how we tell people externally from the collective around what we're doing as a collective and what progress we're being made. So who's in the MND Research Collective? We have 3 expert driving teams, and these are made up of our discovery research team, clinical care research, and our people with lived experience. So we have between 10 and 14 members in our discovery and clinical care research teams, and we have representatives from across Australia and New Zealand. And our lived experience group, we have about 40 people currently registered, which is fantastic. And then each of these expert driving teams has nominated a chairperson, and then that chairperson becomes part of the board or the leadership team of the collective. So our board has representatives from each of the expert driving teams. It also has additional researchers and additional members of the lived experience community. And really importantly, we ensure that we have an equal representation of researchers and people with lived experience. It's co-chaired by myself and Gethin, and we also have representatives from the other MND organisation in Australia, MND and me, as well as representations from the state associations. So this is the general governance structure of the MND Research Collective. And then in addition to this, we have what we call state nodes. So in Australia, we have different states, and each state has their own state node, which is made up of researchers and people with lived experience. So researchers across the research pipeline, so from discovery to clinical care research, and people with lived experience who meet regularly to discuss what research is happening in their state. So this is where we're at now, or this is what we've achieved since we first started with our summit event in November 2020. So through the summit, we developed our outcomes, our purpose, vision and values. In June 2021, we established our governance structure, assembling our discovery expert driving team. In Australia, our real strength is preclinical research, and so this group of researchers were already really strongly collaborating. So this is the reason why this team was established first, and the other expert driving teams were established later as we started to build those collaborations. In June, we also established our state nodes, who continue to meet regularly. In March 2022, we recruited our members of our board and representatives from each of the lived experience, each of the expert driving teams. And then in March this year, we had an expression of interest to the MND community to join our lived experience team. We had a huge number of people register their interests. It's been a fantastic thing for people with MND to be involved in. And we had our initial introductory meetings, which was really about being really clear about what it means to be a part of the MND Research Collective. And then in May this year, we held our first in-person workshop. And that's where we really revisited, was an opportunity for people within the collective to meet and connect with each other. And we also revisited our outcome and priorities. And now I'll hand over to Gethin to give an update on where we're at now.
Thanks, Beck. Before we got to the workshop, we went back and really had a look at what came out of the original summit and all our objectives. So as you'll see there, it's a pretty long list of these are all the sort of aims and objectives that came out of the original summit. And I haven't got time to go through with you there, but it's basically a traffic light system. So green are things we've got well established and running. Yellow is on the way, and red we haven't started yet. But as you can see, that list is incredibly ambitious. So part of the idea of the workshop was also to sit back a little, take a look at what we've said we're going to do, and then actually work out what we can do going forward to actually achieve our objectives. So the workshop was in Melbourne earlier this year, and as Beck said, we brought together the full collective group, and it was really to regroup, reflect, refresh, and revisit what we did before, and develop some real key outcomes for moving forward. So the outcomes and activities from the workshop, we had that really strong lived experience voice in that workshop, which really sort of changed the way we looked at things. And the outcomes from the workshop are really about how we run the collective and how we're going to make it sustainable going forward. So it was very much about the importance of connection and communication. That's been a really strong driver now of everything we do going forward. The clarity of our identity. So it was really, we wanted to develop genuine principles for the way we work as a collective. Again, putting that strength of that lived experience voice right at the core, that I think is truly established in this now. I think there's no doubt that we're being driven very strongly by that lived experience voice. And the next thing that came out of it was it was really obvious that we needed a roadmap going forward, that something that's going to really map out what we're doing. So we're now working on that roadmap, and we need to identify the barriers to progress, what makes a great collective, and also the problems that we should be addressing in MND research. And again, we come back at the bottom to we've got to communicate what we're doing to make sure everyone knows what we're doing. We can review that progress as well, and we work out the best ways of making sure that we know within the collective what we're doing, and also everyone else outside the collective can see that what we're doing. So as I said, we're developing this roadmap, as you say, and here we've got basically the initial priorities that have been put forward by the three different lived experience expert working groups. So the first two are from the lived experience group. So it's what they're really focused on is ensuring the effective translation of research goes into practice, that the research outcomes really do make a difference to the lives of people living with MND. And they want to build sustainability into the collective board, which is kind of the management committee. From the basic, the discovery research team, it's really how we can facilitate that researchers connect and collaborate and share resources. It provides a framework to maximise the growth and development of the workforce, all our researchers, and again to enable that rapid translation of discovery research. From the clinical care team, we see the support the research community to develop and conduct the research projects that will actually go into improving care. And also, again, it's that development of strategies that will fast-track the research into practice. So already, just from the initial priorities, you can see there's a clear consensus there. And when we bring those together into a final roadmap, we're really hoping there'll be a clear guide for where we go. So where have we got to so far? So these are the outcomes and our future initiatives. One of the first things we set up is a research resource map and a database. So basically, we've got all the researchers across Australia initially in the discovery space to say what reagents do you have, what mouse models, what cells. So they're all in a centralised database now. So if you want to do some work in a specific area, you can go and see, is anyone already doing this? Can I just get it from someone in Australia rather from overseas? Also included in that is a research skills database. So we need to know who's got what skills in Australia, who should you go and talk to if you want to work out what you're doing. In the healthcare research area, it's a lot more fragmented. In the discovery, the lab-based research is usually in large institutions. They're well supported. They're well networked. Healthcare research tends to be often in sort of perhaps in smaller clinics, hospitals, and they're not as well resourced. So what we really identified a clear need is to do actually a research audit across Australia, so we know who's doing what, where, and then we can start putting people together and building critical masses across Australia and developing those skills, and people can combine resources. The lived experience driving team was a critical thing, a real critical part of this. That's in place. One really good outcome that has come directly from the collective is a grant that jointly funded by us and Fight MND for $1 million for 4 years was to develop this APRILS program, Australian Preclinical Research, and that is going to build a pipeline across to accelerate preclinical drug testing across different mouse and cell models. We've just established an early mid-career mentoring program to allow people in that MND research space to work together and gain mentors to help them boost their career sort of paths. Clinical trial network, that's in very early stages. Matthew Keenan is leading the development of that. A clinical trial information portal for patients. And then guidelines and develop national guidelines and the standard of care. There's a grant application at the moment to develop that. So in summary, what do? We facilitate information exchange, we amplify the lived experience voice in research considerations, facilitate collaboration, link discovery, clinical and care researchers together, and we promote awareness of and engagement with research initiatives, and we try and communicate what we do. What we want to make sure, what we don't do, we want to make sure everyone knows that. We're not going to tell researchers what to do. We're not going to tell you what research you do. We're not going to say these are priority research areas. We're not going to force people to work together. We just provide the framework within which they can do that if they want. We really don't want to duplicate other initiatives. We'd rather bring those initiatives into the collective and work with them. And we want to make sure the collective doesn't become another silo. So we really want to make sure everyone knows what we're doing and we communicate it out. And that's a really critical aspect of it. And just very briefly, to thank, this isn't just me and Beck, you know, the lived experience community have been brilliant. They've jumped on board and they're what's driving this. And the research community, again, have jumped into it, have been really open to working. And Beck and I couldn't do this without the support of both MND Australia and Fight MND. Our boards and our management have pretty much given us free rein to do this and just get on with it, which has been fantastic. And we should recognise the board as well. These are all volunteers who are just giving their time, and specifically I'd like to acknowledge Murray Gill. Unfortunately passed away from MND, but he was the one really applying the blowtorch early on in this process to get it moving and get it established. So without Murray, probably a lot of this wouldn't have happened. So thank you.
Thank you both. All right, I think we have time for maybe one, maybe two questions. Caltip, I think I saw your hand first.
Gethin, so what's the impetus for the collective so that the two organizations can collaborate better? And so is there an opportunity to then coordinate between the two organizations for you and Beck? So, you know, for example, the ALS Association doesn't put out a target validation funding program because Target ALS does that. And so if they're doing it, then we don't have to do the same program. So is that what you and MND, Fight MND, are you sort of trying to figure out sort of which programs you'll coordinate and which one will be run by one and which one will be run by the other?
We certainly talk probably outside of the collective. We work together a lot to make sure that we're not funding the same people, doing the same things. There's crossovers in topics that we fund, but we certainly make sure that we're not duplicating each other as much as possible. That was probably beyond the collective. That was already happening. Really, the collective was about, put it bluntly, bang for our buck. You know, we should, every time we put $1 of research funding out there, we want to make sure we get as much value out of that dollar as we can. And the way to do that is to encourage people to work together and share their resources instead of duplicating them, basically.
Great, thank you. Love the idea of leveraging our dollars as most powerfully as possible. I think you've got 40 seconds. Go.
Yeah. So there's a question online from Kevin Robinson at Niels. Is the research resource database accessible to all entities outside Australia? And if so, is it free?
At the moment, it's not available outside Australia, but generally the MND research concept and things that sit within it, we're hoping we'll be able to expand more internationally.
Great. Thank you. You helped me thank both Gethin and Beth for their presentation.